Hey everybody. I wanted to have our first lunch and learn topic about sleep and weight loss, and kind of how the two intertwine and how to maximize the two of them. Um, so I usually start these off. Obviously, this is a recorded call, but I usually start these off with like a short little serve. Maybe you can just do like a little self check, checking in with yourself. Write them down would be helpful because then you can refer back to them. But one of the major things when it comes to sleep is talking about disordered sleep. So who here feels like they have some sort of sleep related disorder? Um, and I'm not going to go too far into detail to explain that. We'll get to that here in a little bit. The second question is how does that directly affect your day-to-day life, your work, your family, your hobbies, your relationships, your nutrition, your ability to take that 30 minutes a day to yourself and get some intentional movement in. And then the final one is what do you believe you can accomplish if you had that quality sleep? Kind of like if you got that time back and you're spending more time in stages 3 and 4, REM and deep sleep. So some sleep statistics that are going on. According to Adam J. Thorsher, MD, in How Is Your Sleep? A neglected healthcare screening tool. I'll put the reference for that in the show notes. According to him, there are 4 different types of categories of disordered sleep in the healthcare specific field: insomnia, hypersomnolence, sleep disordered breathing, and parasomnia. What are those? I think some of those probably rung a bell. Insomnia is difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, leg discomfort, interfering with sleep, also known as restless leg syndrome, insufficient sleep, and non-restorative sleep, meaning that you're missing out on your REM and your deep sleep. Hypersomnolence is difficulty staying awake in waking hours, excessive daytime sleepiness, and sudden loss of muscle tone in moments of emotion. That one kind of threw me for a loop when I read that. And I was like, what is that? That is narcolepsy. So that is, if we were talking right now, I just passed out. Lost all muscular tone and your ability to hold your head up and stay awake. The next one was sleep disordered breathing. This one is actually pretty common. When I returned from the military and I got some sleep related, not treatment, but like doing the investigation on how my sleep was. It's actually found that I have what's called obstructive apnea. So sleep apnea. There are points in my sleep when I stop breathing, then I take a big breath in to try to recapture that missing air, so to speak. Another one is loud snoring, guilty as well. And then the final one is witness pauses in breathing, and that is full on apnea. Apnea is very dangerous because it can actually potentially lead to death. Parasomnia, trouble with your dream content or quality. Once again, using myself as a reference point, I very rarely dream. And I spend a lot of time focusing on the quality of my sleep and maximizing that. So while that is a potential disorder, it also is rather common. That's not to say that it's good or bad, it's just common. Sleep-related eating. If you find yourself standing in front of the refrigerator in the middle of the night and wondering how you got there, that would be parasomnia. Excessive movement in bed when asleep. This is not restless leg syndrome. This is like tossing and turning and moving around a lot. Abnormal behaviors arising from sleep, referred to as a REM sleep disorder, and bruxism, which is grinding. That is another sleep disorder that is in the category of parasomnia. 2 hormones that I wanted to speak about that actually have a lot to do with our sleep and disordered sleep are leptin and ghrelin. So leptin The function of leptin is to balance your energy systems. It triggers satiety, meaning that the feeling of fullness. So after you have a meal, you feel like you're full and you don't need to continue eating. It's formed in the adipose cells, which is your fat tissue. Everybody is like, oh, fat tissue, but everybody has fat tissue on them. Leptin is affected adversely by low quality sleep or lack of sleep. What that does is that it triggers storage and therefore increases your fat cells at its base. That's like a very basic way to discuss that. Sleep serves a number of functions specifically related to the endocrine system, and dysfunctional sleep throws a wrench into the whole system a number of ways. As it applies to leptin, it turns off the trigger for satiety and stores energy as fat cells. So that's kind of the adverse effect of sleep as it relates to leptin. Conversely, we have ghrelin. Ghrelin, I like to think of it as like as gremlin. If you've ever seen the movie Gremlins, gremlins can't get wet and you can't feed them after midnight. So it helps me remember exactly what ghrelin, the function of ghrelin is. The main function is it's a hormone that triggers hunger. So if you're feeling hungry, that is typically the hormone is being released and then it's being kind of passed through the body. And then obviously you get that hunger pang or that hunger feeling. It stimulates appetite and triggers your brain when it's time to eat. Like our circadian rhythm when we're sleeping, wake, sleep time, understanding kind of how those things operate together. Ghrelin does the same thing, except it happens, for most people, it happens 3 times a day. There are certain other people who have trained themselves into what's the word I'm thinking of? Intermittent fasting, pardon me, sorry about that. So intermittent fasting windows where people have like an 8-hour window where they have to get meals in and kind of hit their calories from there. Ghrelin is adversely affected by disordered sleep because it's always triggered into the on position. So always being hungry, always feeling like you're not satiated from your food. This can lead to a lot of intrusive eating because the brain is telling you that you have this constant state of hunger, that you're starving, et cetera, et cetera. The two of those hormones operate independently, one triggering hunger and the other one triggering satiety. So if we're adversely affecting those and they're going in 2 different directions, you can see how that would directly, it's almost like a double whammy. We doubly impact on our sleep. And it's adversely affected by poor sleep quality. And therefore not only trigger storage in fat cells, but also trigger a constant state of hunger. It's this cycle that we get into with disordered sleep as it relates to our appetite. We can see how that would potentially lead to weight gain, like unintentional weight gain. So the major question here and the answers that I can help provide here, obviously sleep is one of the major tenets of collective health and wellness, specifically focusing on the sleep quality. There are a number of ways to increase your sleep quality, fighting the good fight of disordered sleep, and therefore creating a more harmonious balance of hormones, which are released, manufactured, and regulated by our sleep. When possible, pick a static bedtime and a wake time that allows for at least 7 hours of sleep. There's a lot of research out there about what the appropriate amount of sleep is. Humans aren't robots. We are independent operating organisms. So, my need for sleep and the amount of sleep that I need is different from, my wife's need for sleep and her time in sleep. With that understanding, the base minimum is usually about 6 hours and the maximum is 9 hours. Anything kind of outside of that window, we start getting into what would be referred to as disordered sleep. Starts affecting the hormones adversely, and the hormone system release, production, the metabolization of hormones. So we really want to kind of find like that sweet spot for ourselves, and it changes over time. It's not going to be static all the time, but if we're able to like get within the certain range, we're usually in a good place there. A couple things that I like to talk about when we're talking about creating static bed and wake times: putting your phone in do not disturb. Personally, my phone goes on do not disturb at 8:30 p.m. I have a something set up on my phone, puts it into the sleep mode. That doesn't mean that we won't get phone calls or text messages if they get pushed through. I have an iPhone. The iPhone has a button that you can push that says deliver anyway. So those of you that are operating in buildings with high operational tempo, you might have issues that happen at night. That doesn't mean that your team won't be able to get a hold of you. It just kind of like creates a little bit of a safeguard, so you're not constantly looking at your phone and one, exposing yourself to that blue light, and two, creating an upregulation by, oh no, I have to deal with this right away. The next thing would be creating a nighttime routine. For some people, that's drinking some tea, maybe doing some reading. For some people, that's watching TV, although I don't suggest watching TV in your bed. Bedrooms aren't for TVs, in my opinion. For some, that's, just having your normal bedtime routine. At this time, I turn my phone on do not disturb, brush my teeth. If you're religious, saying some prayers. If you're not, maybe doing some diaphragmatic breathing, which I'll get into here in a little bit. The Netflix show that you're watching can always wait until tomorrow. Netflix isn't going anywhere. That show isn't going anywhere, I promise. Avoid upregulating activities. The easiest way that I can do this is, we have this constant brain process of, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. Oh, I got to think about that for tomorrow. Oh, I'm worried about this, right? Create 2 lists. And it doesn't have to be like long duration lists. It can be just like very short, right off the top of your head. One list is to worry. So something that you're worried about or something that you need to accomplish. And then the other one is the to-do list for the next day. Once we have taken those things from our brain, put them on a piece of paper, typically that kind of helps us to down regulate a little bit better. We've got that written down. We can focus on it the next day, and we can really get into a good sleep pattern. I usually keep mine on my phone. It helps me to physically offload those things onto a piece of paper or my phone for the evening, and then I'm done. I'm done with it for the evening until the next day when I have to focus on it. I mentioned breath work, and I mentioned prayer, or whatever kind of deity that you might pray to or honor, so to speak. Personally, I prefer breath work. There is a direct neurophysical connection between the two, between taking those breaths and focusing on them, and actual physical down regulation. I've seen it through, there's a ton of research on it, but I've also personally seen it through actually watching my heart rate descend as I'm going through a breathwork routine. You look at your, I have a watch that has heart rate on it. So I'll look at that before I start the routine, see where I'm at, and then I'll spend 5 minutes going through breathwork, and then I will look at it again, and typically it's about 5 to 7 beats lower. And that's a good point to get us into a down regulatory state. So breathing is typically an unconscious effort, but made into a conscious activity, it triggers both the neurological and muscular systems, and has been shown to increase the speed to, duration of, and cadence of sleep stages, particularly slow wave sleep and REM sleep, which are most reparative stages. So the 2 methods, one is used for downregulation at sleep, and that's just typical box breathing. Box breathing, think about it as a long belly breath in. I usually breathe in through my nose and focus on pushing my belly out, as opposed to breathing into the top of my lungs, which is panic breathing. We don't want to do panic breathing before bed. That's not a great idea. So breathing in, up through my nose, holding for 4 seconds or so, and then a long breath out through my mouth, and then holding there for 4 seconds. Repeating that cycle for a total of 5 minutes. Doesn't take a lot of time to get our heart rate down and to downregulate that system. If we are in a panic situation, there is a type of diaphragmatic breathing or breath work that we can do in order to bring ourselves down. Say you're in traffic, or you're road ragey, or whatever might have you, but you're in a heightened situation where you're upregulated. That is just called double barrel breathing. I mess that up every single time. And all that is once again, we're breathing into our belly. That is the most important part of this. So it's a big breath in through our mouth. And after that, big breath in on top of that, top off that breath, and then we're going to breathe out. You can also do that through your nose. And then we get to that minimum breath. Breathe in through our mouth. And breathe out normal. There's no holding there. It's just breathe in, and then breathe out. Once again, 5 minutes. That'll help downregulate us quite a bit. The final piece is, well, there's one more piece. Minimizing alcohol consumption at later times in the day. Everybody that's going to be viewing this as an adult. Drinking alcohol is a choice of yours. Realizing that there's always consequences with that. Not necessarily legal consequences, hopefully, but it affects your sleep, it affects your nutrition, it affects your ability to function both at that time and the next day. So alcohol consumption, once again, you're an adult, make your own decisions. Just try and move that away from your bedtime, or try to do it in a reasonable fashion, right? I do not suggest slamming a bunch of bourbon before you go to bed to help you sleep. That is going to be counterintuitive and do the exact opposite of what you think it's going to do. And once again, balancing that, if you're going to drink alcohol, make sure you're, one beer or whatever and a glass of water. So we're balancing that out, staying hydrated as we're getting ready for sleep. The final piece is obviously, this is the wellness program for Priority Life Care. Schedule some time with me. The program that we run here at Collective Health is not a one size fits all. It's a one-on-one. I and my team address your specific needs, and we meet you where you're at. I'm not going to create these big, scary goals. Maybe there is one, but we just like to do things in a small, approachable, way. Best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. We create micro goals and check in on those weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the cadence that you want. You guys spend so much time caring for others, your teams, your residents, your families. It's definitely beneficial to spend some time on yourself. You can't fill from an empty cup. So we are here to help you create these small, manageable, achievable goals and move you towards a life of wellness. Thanks a lot.